Well, hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to Centering REDI in Everyday Life. During today's 1 hour session, we'll be discussing building and intentionally avoiding. Pardon me, I'm going to just start all over again. During today's session, which will be held for 1 hour, we will be diving in and discussing building with intentionality, avoiding tokenism, and building a REDI Plus strategy for improving workplace culture. It is absolutely wonderful to have each of you with us here today. And please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat while I introduce myself to those of you I have not met as of yet. I do see some familiar faces, so welcome back to all. And for those of you that are first joining us for the first time to an event, welcome. It is wonderful to have you with us today. My name is Tracy Vavrick, and I'm a member of the team here at CFC. And today I'm joining you from my home in Calgary, Alberta, and I acknowledge and pay tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Now, today is a special day. Today is a moment to celebrate love. And I have been reflecting on that it's also Random Act of Kindness Week and also the importance of love this week. As we continue to show up and strengthen our support for reconciliation, I'm looking at my support of reconciliation. And I'm going to hold space for a moment for the love of humankind, which many of us have interpret the definition of philanthropy as the love of humankind. And I'm holding space that we're all united in love. And as we travel our life journey, we're reminded to hold love as our base from which we grow, we heal, and we lead. And leading from a place of love allows for our hearts to fill with reflections as well as gratitude. So this allows for our love for ourselves and for others to continue to grow. And my goodness, as we know as community foundations, we're in this together. So let's continue to create peace with more love and to be together as we continue to support and to continue on with our reconciliation journeys, because we know that we're walking hand in hand and we're part of the healing journey. So as we continue to do so, let's focus on actively building an inclusive and caring future of peace, friendship, and understanding. I'm all in, and I hope you'll join me in being all in. So, and I appreciate each of you as you continue to join us today and for other events. You're continuing to explore ways to strengthen your foundation as well as your community. And I share my deep gratitude for you for doing so. And again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And so before we dive into today's webinar, just going to go through a few housekeeping details. A friendly Zoom reminder, we are in meeting mode, as we like to ensure we can allow for extra dialogue between each other throughout the session. So please keep your microphone muted during the presentation, and there will be a chance for discussions later on in today's webinar. But please, if you do have questions as we're going through today's session, please pop them into the chat box. We'll be collecting the questions and ensuring that we provide them to our speaker today, and also working towards ensuring we can provide answers to you, if not throughout the session, but or at the end of today's session. As I mentioned earlier, we are set for 1 hour, so we're here for 60 minutes, and this session is available to you in English and French. To access the French and the English interpretation, you'll see a globe at the bottom of your screen. So if you click on that globe, you can switch between French and English. You are also able to access the slide deck in English and French. At the very top of your screen, you'll see the green bar that indicates the view options. If you click on the arrow beside it, a panel will drop and it'll appear. So on that panel, you'll see a tab that says Shared Screens, and you're able to select to view either the English slide deck or the French slide deck through this manner. So just mindful, it takes a moment to get set up. So hopefully everyone has selected their language of choice as well as the slides of choice. I am absolutely honored now to welcome back and introduce to you a very dear friend of Community Foundations of Canada, but also to many others throughout the network. Ruth Mojeed Ramirez is again joining us, and many of you have met Ruth in the past, as I've indicated. Ruth is the Chief Equity Officer for the Inclusion Project. Now, the Inclusion Project aims to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion in Canadian society by engaging partners and decision makers through research, knowledge, as well as community. In her role, Ruth's research and her engagement and solutions design focus on an intersectional and intergenerational approach to ensure that we look at addressing complex issues of race, decolonization, as well as gender equality. Now, Ruth leads the organizational REDI strategy development and coaching among multi-level stakeholders in the public as well as the private sector. And for those of you that are not aware, Ruth comes from a community foundation background. She started with the Victoria Community Foundation many years back and has been part of our network since that time of her initial start with the Victoria Foundation. And Ruth, it is absolutely wonderful to have you with us today. You continue to guide us and share with us some tremendous opportunities and learnings, but you also help us to ensure that we pause and we reflect and we help to shift where we are. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to continue to mentor, to teach, and also to share our opportunities of creating equality for all. So I'm thrilled to welcome you back again. And Ruth, I'll turn today's session over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Tracy. It's such a pleasure to be warmly welcomed back. Again, I say it every time I'm here. It's not an opportunity that I take for granted by any chance. So I'm very pleased to be joining you and the team, as well to welcome back everyone who is joining us today. I can see some things happening in the chat already. And as Tracy recognized, it's a special day today. Really glad that you're all still at work, but we also understand that there may be one or two things happening in your personal worlds, but that you continue to prioritize this. Again, we say thank you. And so there is on one hand what today is. On another hand, it's Black History Month, and you may have seen some of us here and there. I imagine some of your community foundations may have had a number of activities on the go to celebrate all of the wonderful experiences and relationships that make this month truly valuable, as well as reflecting an opportunity to reflect on what histories have brought us to this point as a group, as a society, as community. So again, thank you very much for continuing to prioritize this. Today's conversation I'm actually quite excited about. And for those who have been part of this journey with us over time, you know that we try to, make it a mix of interactions, discussions, as well as just getting into some of the more theoretical is not the word now, but some of the more theory conceptual aspects of the discussions that we have, but more and more we want to encourage that interaction, because every time we get a chance to be in the room with this group in particular, as well as the cohort that comes together on a monthly basis, we find that there is so much that people want to share. There is so much that people want to learn from the others around as well. And so we try to ensure that we're continuing to hold that space and to create it, but also mindful that we continue to co-create that. And we hope that you will be part of that journey even today as well. As Tracy mentioned in her opening, and as I'm sure with each and every one of us, we are joining from unceded territories, places where, as we build relationships, as we do life together with individuals within the community. All of this, it really should give us opportunities and causes to pause and to ponder the really really deep privilege, if you may, that we have as uninvited guests on this land. And I'm glad Tracy used the word at the beginning that, for her, she's all in. And I think being here today, that's already signifying something about your commitment to being part of the solution, your commitment to being part of shaping and contributing to that future that we all desire. So I bring you greetings. Home for us as the Inclusion Project, I have mentioned that in the past, is the unceded territories of the Lekwungen speaking peoples of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, otherwise known as Victoria in British Columbia. And as Tracy mentioned at the introduction, that my journey being part of this country, this society that we call Canada, that story would not be complete without reflecting on that time that I got the opportunity as a student at the time to work with the Victoria Foundation. That really it set me up. It was just the foundation I needed to be able to connect with community in a certain way, in a truly meaningful way, I have to say. And also for me to understand some of my relational accountabilities to the original owners and stewards of this land. So once again, taking an opportunity, taking a moment to pause and to reflect on that. And I imagine that for each and every one of you as well, you get that chance to do so from time to time, if not on a day-to-day basis. So our theme for today, so we said, was centering beyond sensitivity training, was centering REDI in everyday life. And the themes that we'll be touching on, we'll be asking ourselves that question: what is sensitivity training? For people who have been part of a journey like this, I imagine that it's not something that you are altogether unfamiliar with. I'm sure you must have come across it at different points in your journey, but we'll try to unpack it a little bit. What exactly does it mean, and how does it play out in the context of our work? And towards the end of this, I mentioned earlier, we're trying to ensure that there will be more room for people to interact amongst themselves, that the conversations that we hold in this space are just the starting point for deeper, more meaningful conversations to happen when we get together in our workplaces, when you have that virtual coffee with someone that you met here or someone in your organization. Okay, so what is sensitivity training and why? Why is it important? And why do we need to move beyond that to ensuring that we're centering REDI? And I will talk about that. Again, I'm sure that for those who are here and who have been part of this journey with us, you know what we're talking about. But sensitivity training ensures people in the workplace or other group environments understand how their actions and practices impact others, as well as the opportunities that exist to learn to respect individual sensibilities. In this case, it's not, for me, when I think of what this is about, it's in some ways, we refer to it as a psychological approach to addressing issues that may impact the experiences, the perceptions of certain groups, depending on, some of the socioeconomic, social determinants that are factored into shaping their experiences. The idea behind sensitivity training is to give us pause to ponder on how our actions or lack thereof, our policies, our practices in the workplace or in other contexts may impact other people. So again, that concept of othering comes in. Essentially, the idea here is to be able to look through and kind of change the aperture and the lens and the mirror through which we envision the experiences of others. The idea here is to call ourselves in, to invite ourselves to the table to talk about how our activities, our actions, our practices, or lack thereof may impact others. So why is it important? Why do you find in lots of organizations, public, private sectors, in the community setting and in other settings, why do they engage in practices like this? One of the reasons is to increase understanding, insight, and awareness about one's own behavior before we even get to, talk about the other. We have in the past talked about. We have in the past talked about the need to in initiating any kind of a ready journey, in initiating any kind of journey toward inclusion, the need to start with the I, the need to understand and recognize that whatever fundamental change needs to happen, we need to see, it needs to be implemented, it needs to begin at that individual level. So once again, an opportunity for us to reflect on what are we bringing to the table, what are we bringing to this world of work? How may our actions, our worldviews, how could they impact others and shape their own experiences to increase understanding and sensitivity of the behavior of others? So now the work that we've already done, and I'm careful to use the word completed. I would say the work that we've initiated with ourselves, that we're able to extend that to whoever is we consider the other, or in this case to others. It helps us to gain better understanding and awareness of group and intergroup processes. It's not uncommon that there would be unsaid things, latent, hidden things that pass through. That hidden phenomenon that just occur within group settings, and sometimes we need to pause to make room for those expressions. As someone who comes from a communications background, we've been told over and over that a lot of the conversations that happen, the interactions that happen between humans, a large percentage of that transcends verbal exchanges. Sometimes it's the visual expressions of people. Sometimes it's things to do with, it's just certain dynamics that if we paid attention to, the question of othering, the question of whose experiences, whose voices are not being allowed in this space, whose experiences are not being centered. When we pay attention to group and intergroup dynamics, that really helps us to gain better understanding of those. So why? Another reason is to increase diagnostic skills in interpersonal and intergroup situations. I talked about that already in terms of being able to dig deeper, especially when we see trends and norms and certain themes and patterns come through. Our ability to respond psychologically to these things ensures that, again, we're continuing to be mindful of the impact of actions within group settings on others. Helps us to increase ability to transform learning into action. It increases the ability. It doesn't always mean that we're able to then act on it. As well, it helps to improve individuals' ability to analyze their own interpersonal behavior. Again, everything centered around how we interact within group settings. So all of these nice and fancy things that we've said about sensitivity training, why then do we need to go beyond that? The rationale for going beyond sensitivity training is based on the need to create a culture of inclusion, where in order to do so, and do so in a way that is sustainable and has lasting impact, it requires that we continue to center the lived experiences of diverse individuals with different worldviews and perspectives. Of course, this requires a framework for change based on the need for safe environments where people can share brave experiences within that, there is a lot to unpack. The question of risk, the question of respect, the question of building trust, the question of safety. And we use that word, the word safety and braveness. I want to say not interchangeably, but in consonance, I should say, in this context, because we understand that all of these elements, all of these ingredients that I talked about, trust and respect and all of that comes together to help people, especially those who have traditionally, historically been othered. It really does help them to see themselves as worthy is not the word now, to see themselves in spaces where they can come forward and share experiences that maybe may make certain people uncomfortable, experiences that maybe themselves they may be uncomfortable with, hence the need for that braveness. So in order to ensure longevity and a lasting impact, it's really important that we go beyond just the training. As I mentioned before, yes, it helps us cultivate the ability to act upon things that we hear, but it doesn't automatically mean that we act on those prompts. And so there still is a need to go beyond the level of, having potential, go beyond the level of, being an individual that is seeking to exist or coexist within group spaces, to being able to, make room, deliberately pause and make room for others. So it's important that we're centering, which is what I will be going to now. Why is it important to then center a ready in all of this? And I will talk a bit about the work that we do at the Inclusion Project. And Tracy talked about it at the beginning, earlier on. So we have a unique framework called the A Ready Plus framework, which essentially stands for accessibility, racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. And as I mentioned, being Black History Month, you can imagine, and through different points, at different points through the year as well, you can imagine, typically we get a lot of requests around, what are some of the key metrics and frameworks that we can implement to help us take an intersectional approach to addressing some of the issues and gaps that we see in our systems, in our structures that continue to other certain people, or continue to leave certain equity deserving and equity denied groups out of those margins of what is equitable. And so for us, we bring in a number of metrics, we bring in a number of indicators. We have a holistic frameworks, a holistic framework, pardon me, that allows us assess policy, to see how they impact diverse group, analyze workforce demographics, and gather qualitative data, provide training, so something like this sensitivity training. But beyond that, based on the need, again, the focus is on intersectionality, but we really take a primary lens of, culture, and intercultural competence to build towards racial equity and inclusion, as well as offering recommendations and a roadmap for building capacity, and then finally developing an accountability framework for sustaining the change process. I bring this up just to give an idea of what a typical process that goes beyond just the sensitivity training, where we're not just checking the box, to reflect on the activities, the situation that came up. That's not even the best way to frame that. But some of the life changing phenomena that we experienced in the summer of 2020, very quickly we found, there was a very reactive response from organizations where everybody was doing a diversity statement. And this, now a few years on, once again, it's Black History Month. There have been some testers and feelers around how much progress have been made around those. And more often than not, it stopped at that level of, doing trainings, trying to just get the language and the lingo and know further action beyond that. So the reason we're saying it's important to go beyond just trying to get language and lingo and have some basic understanding of concept is because of the need for change, and change requires deep work. So how would we take an REDI framework like this, for instance, and if we're using that in relation to training and capacity development and knowledge development and things like that, to just simplify it, we say we very early on we talk about defining the objectives. What is the reason why behind this? The why, as well as the who, justifies the how, justifies the where we're trying to get to as well. And so it's really important that from the get-go, we have a clear understanding of what we're trying to achieve. And of course, there are certain things that we'll find along the way, along the lines of the work that we start to implement. But it begins with understanding the why. Why is this important? Why do we need to do it? So clearly defining the objectives will help us know what to cover. And this is not just in terms of training. This is also to do with evaluation and measuring and implementing any kind of change. Choose clearly defined metrics. Now, on this subject of metrics, what we find in working with particular groups that, to use language that may be marginalized, that may be othered, is it's not a one size fits all. And so that's why it's important that we take a deep dive, we take a deeper inquiry into attempting to understanding where they're at, and ensuring that we're measuring and bringing in indicators that are relevant to those circumstances. And then, of course, the implementation part as well, that leads us then to how we evaluate the effectiveness. Again, training can be interchanged, and we're trying to simplify here because there's only so much that we're able to cover in a setting like this. But then there is a fact sheet that follows after now, and as some of you may know, as I mentioned earlier, we have the cohort that gets together and does a deeper dive. So this is some of the things that we will be going deeper into. But yeah, so part of that is ensuring we're doing an audit and assessment, and we play with that word audit from time to time because depending on, especially for our partners and clients from the private sector, the word audit just suggests something different. But essentially, we do a deep assessment into understanding, it's an environmental scan. We're gathering some data, we're collecting some info and insights into where people are at, to ensure that we're giving solutions and suggestions and recommendations that are really, really tailored to their needs as well. As well, we want to see we want to collect some data around some of the tangible and intangible impact around behavior change, if any, as these are starting to come up, we're evaluating some of the more qualitative, experiential aspects of that. Of course, doing that requires that we're making space in the context of work for people to come together and to share. And again, collecting that data could be from both a quantitative or qualitative point of view. And we've talked about that in the past. So in doing this work, how do we ensure that we're not just doing it for the sake of being visible? The example that I gave around, the uprising, the situation that came up just a few years back. How do we ensure that we're not just paying lip service or just being performative in our orientation towards building, towards responding to whatever is coming up? Yeah, I see that question, Jem. Will the pre-training assessment be equated to baseline recognition in some ways? Yes, essentially, you're trying to gather some baseline information to help tailor something. And again, we typically would encourage, except if you have some in-house, like really supported group, employee resource group, committee, or anything of the sort that's leading that work. It's important to do it in uh, consultation in through an engagement process with people who have dedicated expertise. But yes, that's essentially what that is, conducting some baseline assessment. So how do we ensure that we're not just paying lip service, that we're not just doing this because it's the fancy thing to do, or even with the best intention, that we're not just doing it because we feel like it's the thing to do? How do we take a very dedicated and deliberate approach to it to ensure we're avoiding any form of tokenism? And I'm sure this is a concept that we're familiar with. So I'll just go over some of these ways. So creating opportunities for true diversity, and we've talked about intersectionality in the past. Essentially, what they are the different expressions of diversity. So it's important that as we're building any kind of training, as we're engaging any kind of qualitative assessment, or doing any kind of baseline data gathering or anything like that, that we're doing that from a lens of intersectionality, and we're factoring in the experiences of diverse individuals, ensuring that even the diverse lens that we're bringing through to this is not just us trying to get through a checklist. It's a journey, not always a destination. Sometimes, of course, we need to have, some pointers. We need to have some bus stops, if you may, where, we're checking in. Like, we can have some touch points, but really it's important. And I think that's language that we've used through and through the journey that we've been on here as well. It's important to know that we're not just checking off a box, um, uh, but that we're trying to really center certain experiences, and certain perspectives in the course of the work. Measuring impact over percentage, again, along the lines of not just paying lip service or checking through a box or anything like that. It's important that we focus on impact, and not just things that seem like behavior change, but are very fleeting in nature. But that, whatever changes are implemented are measured over time. That we're addressing issues systemically. Again, people who have been part of this journey would understand this systemic approach that we're talking about, where it's not just, point in time interventions or one-off interventions or anything like that, but we're taking a more comprehensive approach to, again, dealing with things for the long haul, and creating support networks. I can't overemphasize this. We've talked in the past on the need to have resources allocated to support people, to support individuals who may be leading this work within our organizations, as well the people that they will be consulting with, that they will be in interaction with. It's important that we have, employee groups, that we have groups within our communities, within our respective foundations, that are able to support one another. The kind of change we're talking about can inherently be burdensome. Needless to say, it can be triggering, and it can be weighty as well. So it's really, really important that we build in support as we go. And so, what do we include, even in a sensitivity training, if that's what, depending on where we're at? Because I've also found instances where people say, all of this sounds good, but knowing where we're at as an organization, whether it's resource based or just in terms of, the knowledge and the capacity that people have, where we just want to start. So what do we do? What do we build into a training training like this or an approach like the one that we've described. So focus on anti-oppression and anti-discrimination, especially when doing racial equity work, gathering any kind of data, conducting any kind of assessment to do with racial inclusion, gender-based inclusion, or any other form of equity-based work. It's really important to try to look into what are some of the factors that measure into, creating that system of oppression. What are some of the nuances that contribute to discrimination, oppression, harassment in the context of work? So it's really, really important, again, to take that tailored approach to things. Address bias, stereotypes, and microaggression. I won't spend too much time on that because I know that's something that we've touched on quite thoroughly in this space in the past. But yeah, those are things that and there are a number of tests, and I believe we shared some resources around that as well. A number of tests that we can take to try to see, what kinds of biases or microaggressions or discriminatory practices are prevalent within our organization. Identify structural barriers and systemic issues, built-in metrics and indicators for measuring change long term. I believe we've also had a session in the past about allyship, and it should be something, I believe it's something that we're able to bring back as well, just to look at, in this context, what exactly does allyship look like? But I'm sure, again, this is something that we're familiar with, and it's important that whatever lived experience you bring, that you see yourself as part of the equation and as part of the solution, and in a bid to change systems that were not ultimately othering ourselves or others. Okay, and how do we build with intentionality? We talked about this before. Conduct a cultural assessment, get leadership buy-in and commitment, engage diverse groups of people, and integrate accessibility in the work that you do. Okay, so I am extra mindful of time, so I'm going to pass it back to Tracy for us to get into our time for discussion, and the questions around that are going to be shared in the chat very shortly. But Tracy, I'll pass it right back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruth. Absolutely fantastic discussion today. And I'm mindful that it's also prodding people, moving people also with thoughts and ideas within themselves. So we're going to move into some breakout rooms. We're going to move in for it'll be just under 15 minutes. So you're going to be moved in randomly in just a moment to a breakout room. So please do join the breakout room. And when you do so, we do have the questions posted here that we encourage you to have some discussion on. So we'll start the breakout rooms. I think our team is just getting these set up here to start the breakout rooms. And it looks like we are ready to go. So we'll see you back in a few minutes then. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much for taking the time to pause and hold some space in the breakout rooms. We've got a couple moments if there's anyone that would like to share any reflections or any thoughts from what you heard in the breakout room, or if it nudged you a little bit. This is a moment for you. Any thoughts there? Jam, please.
Sure. I'm probably going to show my ignorance a little bit. So, we had an opportunity to chat, Jara and Uliana and I, and we realized how hefty the questions are because it's a very big space. But we were just talking about navigating the EDI space and also the sensitivity about self-defining or just or saying that you're from this certain equity deserving group. So just how do you kind of create those KPIs, but also how do you collect baseline data without really gathering that information or being respective of it. And then also layering on EDI space, a lot of it is mental model shift. What are those short-term, I guess, inclinations or shifts that you can tag on to say that there is a shift in this model or whatever, as opposed to a 5-year strategic plan where you can say, oh, we're seeing a major shift, because a lot of mental model shift takes ample amount of years. So we just were trying to understand what are those short-term indicators that can feed into those larger goals.
Tracy, can I jump in on this one? Awesome, awesome. Jem, you said at the beginning that you might be showing your ignorance. I think you did quite the opposite. And it sounds like you had a robust conversation in there. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time to go over all of those. So if you want to do a follow-up, I believe we have a fact sheet that has our information there. I'm also happy to share mine or any of the CFC team. We can continue this. But something that I would want to say at the beginning there around, people self-identifying and agency, what that's got, I think that's what you're asking, what that might do due to impact their own sense of self, their readiness to be able to bring certain things forward and all of that. I think all of that really just points to the complexity of what we're talking about. And again, the need to create spaces for people to go on their journey at their own pace, where it's not a one size fits all, where we expect that just because we say we have this intention, that means everyone is ready. The pace of change, the level, the timing of readiness for people may differ just as everyone differs. And of course, part of what's really crucial here as well is the need to emphasize respect, where even when people feel comfortable enough to be able to share some of those brave experiences with us, that we still pace it out in such a way as allows them be the author of their own journey, of their own stories, as part of the framework, the larger framework that we're trying to build together. So again, this is where it comes in, where it's not a one size fits all set of metrics that you have. The framework that we've been using is something that we've been building over time, and we find that there are different iterations of that, and we're always learning, even as we get into organizations, when we get into community settings, because again, people's experiences are just as different as they are.
Oh, Ruth, thank you so much. And I'm really mindful of you leading us through this path. And something that you noted today as well is that we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to develop and to grow. So, Jem, I also echo from Ruth's perspective. You are very advanced for even the place of where you are sitting today. So we thank you for that. We do have various resources on our website. So I'm going to encourage you to go to the website. This has been a journey that we started in 2021, I believe it is, Ruth. Yeah, 2021. So there's some fantastic resources and tools that are available for you. So please do take a look there. And thank you for being with us today as well. I am very grateful, and I'm reflecting for a moment as well from just what I've heard from the conversation just now. And I'm also really mindful of the conversations that we've had in the past and we're continuing to have. Now, Ruth, you guided us today in a very significant manner. You brought us down to the next level of the sensitivity training. And this is my first moment in time with you on this, and I share with you, it allowed for me to really unpack some of the other learnings and to understand the depth of the sensitivity training, from how we continue to look at our actions and our practices and how they impact others, and how we are responsible to continue to increase our skills and ability. And this is important because as we continue to grow respect, as we continue to go beyond our training, we are building the next culture, that culture of inclusion, trust. You mentioned the word braveness today. That sat with me, and I want to thank you for that. And so as we continue on this navigation of learning, I also am mindful that many days I hear from community foundations, we want to bring someone on our board, but we don't want to tokenize them. And you identified today the importance of that again, of not tokenizing and the importance of looking through that lens of intersectionality and looking at all the different factors of that are for that individual. And so looking at experience, looking at cultures, looking at the individual. And that is really, again, sitting with me again. And I'm going to share that out with others throughout the network as well that weren't able to be part of today's session. And so on behalf of the network and behalf of everyone with us today, I thank you. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your care. And thank you for continuing to support us as we navigate our learning and continuing to grow, not only as individuals, but as professionals in the work that we're doing. I'm going to ask for the members that are still with us at this moment to please also answer a few questions for us in our poll. So this poll helps us to design future events, and your voice is important to us. So please do take a moment. There's only 4 really quick questions. It will only take a moment for you to provide feedback to us. And as the poll is just getting ready to close, I also just as well want to encourage each of you to join us again for our next event. Our next event is held on February 20th, and it is around anti-racism through trust-based giving. So as we think about our work with our donors and our community stakeholders and our partners, this is another important discussion for each of us. In addition as well, please watch our CFC events page where we continue to update and add various events that are relevant for the sector as well as for the Community Foundation Network. And so any of the events that you'll notice that are, say, open, anyone that is in part of the sector is welcome to join us for those future events as well. And as we get ready to close today, I hold gratitude for each of you. Please take a moment to pause, share the love for yourself, and offer a little more love to those around you as we continue to celebrate Valentine's Day. And we'll look forward to connecting with you again in the near future. Stay well, everyone.